The cake was already sweating when we arrived, frosting sliding in slow motion like it knew it had been rushed. I noticed things like that when I was nervous, small details. The angle of a balloon, the way a table leaned slightly to the left. My daughter wore a paper crown she'd made herself at school, glitter flaking onto her shoulders. She kept touching it, checking that it was still there. The living room filled quickly. My sister's kids ran ahead, shoes on the couch, laughter ricocheting off the walls. Envelopes appeared, crisp and identical, followed by boxes that were unmistakably expensive. My father stood near the fireplace, a practiced smile in place, calling names in a voice that expected applause. I stayed where I was, my daughter's hand warm in mine. I told myself this was her day, not mine. I told myself we could get through an hour. When it was her turn, he paused. It wasn't a mistake. He looked at her crown, at me, and then he smiled in a way that was meant to be playful, conspiratorial. She doesn't count as family, he said, lightly, as if offering a correction to a seating chart. The room didn't stop. Paper tore. Someone laughed too loudly. My mother reached for a napkin she didn't need and stared at the table. My brother's kids were already prying open boxes, screens flashing to life. My daughter looked up at me. She didn't cry. She waited. That was the worst part, how patient she was. I didn't argue. I didn't ask him to repeat himself. I didn't scan the room for allies or rehearse a speech. I took my daughter's hand, felt her squeeze back, and we walked out. The door closed with a sound that was more polite than I felt. In the car, she asked if she had done something wrong. I told her no. I told her some adults make rules that don't make sense, and our job is to leave when they hurt people. She nodded, absorbing it the way children do, without filing it away as a permanent truth. On the drive home, memories kept intruding, uninvited. Christmases with different piles under the tree. College funds discussed as if they were weather. Some families got rain, some didn't. The way favors had always come with a ledger, invisible until you needed something. That night, after she fell asleep with her crown on the nightstand, I opened my laptop. I didn't do it in a rush. I made tea. I sat down. I logged in. For years, I'd handled things quietly. My name on the SUV because my credit made the rate reasonable. A joint account I managed because someone had to keep track. Cards I'd authorized for groceries and gas because it was easier than explaining boundaries to people who heard them as insults. I reviewed each line item the way you would inventory after a storm. Then I changed permissions. I removed my name. I canceled what I owned. I didn't write messages or leave notes. Systems work best when they're allowed to do their jobs. By morning, the consequences arrived without me lifting a finger. A grocery checkout. A gas station. A dealership where someone learned that a car is not a birthright. My phone buzzed while I was packing lunches. I let it buzz. Then it buzzed again. I silenced it and cut apples into careful slices. At school drop-off, my daughter hopped out and ran to her friends. She turned back to wave, crown, less now but smiling. Later, I listened to the voicemails. Confusion first, then anger dressed up as concern. Accusations that I was overreacting, that I'd embarrassed everyone, that family doesn't keep score. The word, punish, appeared, as if consequence were something I was doing to them. Not something that happens when access is revoked. I didn't call back. The first clear moment of authority came not from me, but from a bank teller who repeated policy in a tone that brooked no argument. From a customer service rep who said, "I'm sorry, but this account holder has removed your authorization," and meant it. From a dealership email confirming a cancellation. Per the owner. They tried my mother next. She called in the afternoon, voice careful, as if approaching a skittish animal. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I did," I replied. "It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be." She sighed. He was joking. I pictured the room the way no one had laughed. Then it should be easy to apologize. Silence stretched. Somewhere in the background, a television murmured. When we hung up, I felt the familiar tug, guilt the old reflex to smooth things over. It passed. Not triumph. Relief, maybe, or steadiness. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. Errands went unfinished. Schedules shifted. People learned how many conveniences had been built on assumptions they never named. My brother texted once. He asked if we could talk. I said maybe later. It wasn't punishment, it was capacity. At home, life went on. Homework dinners. A new tradition of making cookies together on Sundays, frosting everywhere. Once, my daughter asked if we'd see Grandpa again. I told her I didn't know. I told her that if we did, it would be because he learned how to be kind. Okay, she said, and went back to stirring. Weeks passed. The edges of anger dulled into something more useful, clarity. I noticed how often my father framed generosity as identity, how easily it disappeared when challenged. I noticed how my mother's silence functioned as consent. There was no dramatic reconciliation. No apology delivered with tears. Instead, there was a message, short and stiff, acknowledging that things had gotten out of hand. It didn't mention my daughter. I didn't respond. One afternoon, a card arrived in the mail. No cash. A gift card unsigned. I put it in a drawer and forgot about it. On my daughter's next birthday, we kept it small. Friends from school. A park. Cupcakes that leaned because we carried them too far. She wore a new crown, sturdier this time, and didn't check it every 5 minutes. As the sun dipped, I watched her run, free and loud, and I felt something settle. Not victory. Not forgiveness. Just the quiet certainty that I had chosen correctly. Some relationships cool when exposed to air. Some power becomes undeniable when it stops announcing itself. I didn't argue that day because arguments invite negotiation. I didn't negotiate my child's worth. If they want back in, they'll find the door where it's always been, open, but with rules posted clearly this time. Until then, we'll keep baking, keep walking away when we need to, and keep choosing the kind of family that counts.